I was once the princess of the sacred river. My voice could make even crocodiles stop swimming, and the moon itself would bow, reflecting in every ripple I glided through. But now, I am trapped inside an empty glass bottle, hidden beneath the pillow of a human boy I don't even know. My name is Rio. I am a mermaid. Golden scales, a sacred voice, daughter of the ancient mermaid clan leader. My mother once warned me, if you leave the river, darkness will find you. But I didn't listen. I only wanted to know what lay beyond. And just once after crossing that boundary, I was captured, imprisoned, misunderstood, and the only one who saved me is the very person about to be sacrificed for a crime he didn't commit. Would you believe the words of a mermaid if one day you found her in a water bottle by the riverbank? A mermaid who crossed the forbidden boundary, a poor human boy who unwittingly became the keeper of the sacred river princess's fate. When two worlds collide, truth, curses, and the desire for freedom begin to unravel. But can a single wish bring justice? Or will it awaken the ancient wrath buried beneath the riverbed? All right, my dear audience, get ready for a story that will leave you in awe. Take a second to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. It's always exciting to see someone joining us from all corners of the world. Once upon a time in the Gola Geechee land along the Atlantic coast of an African-American community, where the whispers of ancestors still drifted quietly with the smoke from kitchen fires and the ceremonial drums echoed far in the wind, there was a sacred river, winding like a ribbon of black pearl through the heart of the South. There, beneath the calm waves, lay the kingdom of the brown-skinned mermaids, spirits who guarded the waters, led by a wise and stern clan leader. Rio was her youngest daughter, a small mermaid with golden scales that gleamed like the last rays of sunlight filtering through eucalyptus leaves. From a very young age, Rio was different. She didn't just sing beautifully or swim swiftly. A fire of curiosity blazed in her eyes. While her older sisters dutifully obeyed their mother and stayed within the boundaries of the sacred river, Rio often gazed up at the sky, listening to strange sounds echoing from afar, the beat of drums at night, the calls of people, the rustling footsteps on the earth above. Each time she asked about the world beyond the river's banks, her mother's voice would grow stern. Humans are not like us. That place is full of ambition, deceit, and danger. Stay here in the water where your voice is magic, not a curse. But on one full moon night, when the entire land trembled with the rhythm of distant drums, when ancient premonitions stirred in every wave, Rio could no longer resist. She swam to the surface, watching the moonlight dance on the river as if it were calling her name. And she knew, despite the rules, despite her mother's words, that she had to discover what awaited on the other side. Rio quietly parted the water, swimming past the sacred boundary where dolphins never ventured, where dark seaweed marked an invisible line between magic and reality. The water changed instantly, no longer soft like a summer blanket. It became swirling, cold, and fierce, but she didn't stop. The wind tilted the waves. The moon cast long shadows on her golden scales, illuminating a stretch of dark water. She didn't know how long she had been swimming. All she knew was that her arms began to tire, and a faint light appeared in the distance. A shore where wooden houses stood, old oak trees draped in moss, and voices rose in what sounded like an ancient ritual. It was an old coastal village in South Carolina, where a woman was carrying water in a clay jug, preparing for the community's moonlit ceremony. Rio hid behind a cluster of water hyacinths. But at that moment, a great wave surged, as if the river itself were punishing her transgression. It crashed against the shore, pulling Rio along and throwing her into the woman's jug just as she bent down to scoop water. The woman, unaware, lifted the jug, placed it on her head in the traditional way, and slowly walked toward the wooden house, where oil lamps flickered like guardian spirits. And inside that heavy clay jug, Rio, the golden mermaid, lay curled up, silent, wet, and terrified, carried far from everything she had ever known. The river behind her fell silent, as if no one had ever crossed its boundary. The woman stepped into the small wooden house, draped with strands of charms and wind chimes made of seashells dangling softly. She set the clay jug down in a corner near a pile of dry firewood, then hurriedly went to the kitchen to prepare for the night's ceremony. No one noticed the faint sound coming from inside the jug, like a breath or a whisper that never fully formed. In that house, a boy sat curled up on the porch. His name was Zion, just 13 years old, with wide eyes that always seemed to be listening for an untold story. He was the woman's grandson, a child who had lost his father and lived with his grandmother since he was small. Zion had never left the village, but his imagination stretched far beyond the dirt paths and ancient hymns. That afternoon, as the scent of incense wafted from the altar, and his grandmother busied herself with preparations for the moon ceremony, Zion slipped into the outer room. He was drawn by something, not a sound but a feeling, as if someone were watching him. The water jug in the corner glimmered with a faint golden streak, a light that didn't come from the sun but seemed to glow from within. Zion approached and touched the rim of the jug. A chill shot through his fingertips. He held his breath, tilted the jug slightly, and then eyes. A pair of eyes opened in the water, deep and shining like twin crescent moons. He stumbled back, heart pounding, lips trembling. His grandmother had told stories of river spirits, ancient beings that could take the form of fish, dwelling in water and snatching away any child who dared tamper with sacred waters. Zion trembled, about to call for his grandmother, but before he could shout, the shimmering creature spoke. The voice, not echoing like a spirit, not whispering like the wind, was clear, bright, and spoke in English. "Please don't scream. I won't hurt anyone. I just want to go home."
Zion stood frozen, as if entranced. The creature's eyes held no malice, only fear and pleading. Wet, curly hair clung to her, golden scales sparkled on her slender arms, and a soft tail curled against the jug's walls, trembling as if from cold. In that moment, all the stories of magic, spirits, or taboos faded away. There was only a lost child, and another child listening. Zion said nothing. He quietly took a bedsheet, gently draped it over the jug as if hiding a treasure, and carefully lifted it, carrying it to his bedroom, his heart racing. In the small room that smelled of damp wood and kitchen smoke, Zion slid the jug under his pillow, trying to act as if nothing extraordinary had happened. He sat beside it for a long time, as if to convince himself he wasn't dreaming. No one knew he was hiding something, nor had anyone taught him what to do when he found a mermaid begging to return home. But this was only the beginning, because in the nights that followed, Rio would start to tell her story, and Zion would begin to believe in a world he'd been told to fear. In the old wooden room, where the sea breeze slipped through the cracks in the walls like the sighs of ancestors, Zion lay still as a shadow. Darkness enveloped everything, with only the faint light from an oil lamp peeking through the curtain, easing the turmoil in his heart. Beneath the thin pillow, the clay jug rested quietly, holding within it a strange creature, a wondrous piece of a puzzle unlike anything he had ever known. From the jug, a whisper rose, soft as water weaving through stones, unclear whether it was a story or a longing seeping out drop by drop. And then she spoke, not rushed, not hurried, but as if each word, each sentence, was part of a river gently flowing into the boy's heart. Rio told of where she came from, a sacred river winding through dense forests and myths. There, every creature had a soul. Every drop of water knew how to keep secrets. On moonlit nights, the entire kingdom would immerse itself in ancient songs, and the laughter of mermaids carried far, reaching the old oak trees on the shore. Her sister was soon to be wed, a grand occasion there, marked by a moonlit singing ceremony where even the ocean fell silent to listen. But now she was trapped here, in the world of humans, where the earth was always dry, hearts were always heavy, and promises dissolved like smoke. She didn't know how long she had been away from home. Did her sister think she had run away on purpose? And her mother, always strict but never lacking in love, did she believe her daughter had died, swallowed by the river for crossing its boundaries? Zion listened without speaking. He didn't interrupt. He didn't question. He sat motionless, like a small rock before a whispering tidal wave in the dark. Each of Rio's stories was like a door creaking open in his mind, images never taught in books, emotions no one had ever named in his own world. This boy, though young, was all too familiar with silence. He was used to the looks from adults that said this life held nothing for the poor. But now, in this cramped room, where no one but him knew of the magic that existed, something unfamiliar sparked in his heart: hope. And when Rio whispered a promise, a wish for anyone kind enough to help her return home, Zion didn't hesitate. He didn't need to ask again. In his mind, that wish had existed for a long time. Not for himself, but for his mother, who always held him as he slept, even when her stomach was empty. And for Malik, his little brother, who each night looked up at the rotting ceiling and imagined distant stars. He didn't need a castle. He didn't need a crown. Just a way out. In the thick darkness of the night, Zion's small hands gently lifted the jug, as if afraid to wake the dream inside. He looked down at Rio, curled up in the water, the light from her golden scales faintly rippling on the surface like an unspoken thank you. No one said another word. There was no need. A quiet understanding slipped into the air, like an ancient vow, etched not in ink, but in heart. That night, a poor boy and a lost mermaid bound their lives together with the invisible thread of trust, something the world outside that room had long since stopped daring to carry. So, what about you? Where in the world are you watching this video from? Drop a comment below. We love the feeling of connecting with our global audience. If this story has made you pause and reflect, help us out with a subscribe and share it with a friend who you think needs to hear it too. That night, the air was hotter than usual. It seemed to congeal over every rooftop in the village, carrying the scent of smoke and the crackling of embers still smouldering in the hearth. In the room where Zion hid the jug containing Rio's life, everything appeared unchanged. The misshapen bamboo pillow, the blanket draped haphazardly, the steady breathing of a child's sleep. But what Zion didn't know was that magic never rests quietly. Rio's golden scales, though she tried to suppress them, still reflected a light as thin as mist, but sharp as a blade. That glow peeked from the edge of the jug, slipping through the gaps in the curtain and catching the curious eyes of Malik, Zion's younger brother, who had just woken up to fetch water. The boy froze just outside the room's door, squinting into the darkness. When he saw the light emanating from the half-covered jug, Malik stood stunned, and like any child raised on Gula tales of myths and charms, his first reaction was fear. Malik screamed, a clear cry that tore through the quiet night. "There's a monster in the house!" Zion jolted awake. His heart pounded like ceremonial drums, not out of fear, but from a deep-seated worry that the secret he had sworn to keep would no longer be his alone. He lunged for the jug, yanked the cloth over it, and shoved it under the bed so quickly it was as if magic guided his hands. Malik kept screaming, while Zion tried desperately to calm him, his voice trembling and sweat pouring as if he had just run a long distance in a dream. But Malik wasn't the only one who heard. In the other part of the house, Nia, their 15-year-old cousin, had been awake even before Malik's cry. Silent as the night itself, she had long noticed Zion's changes, his far-off gazes, his sneaky steps into the room with an expression unlike his usual self. And tonight, she had been watching quietly. Nia stepped into the room, her curly hair tied high, her eyes sharp like their grandmother's in her youth. She didn't need to ask much. She simply bent down, reached out, and pulled the jug from under the bed. Zion's hand grabbed at it, but it was too late. The jug caught the light of the freshly lit oil lamp, and the golden glow inside shone brilliantly. In that moment, Rio looked up. Her eyes met Nia's. No resentment, no pleading, just presence. Silent, but impossible to ignore. Nia narrowed her eyes. Unlike Malik, she didn't panic. Unlike Zion, she wasn't speechless. She smiled, a smile half surprised, half calculating. "If that's a mermaid, then I want a wish too." The room sank into a heavy silence. Rio, still curled in the water, tilted her head slightly. Her voice rose like a stifled song. "Only one wish. Just one. Any more will awaken what should not be stirred." But Nia was the kind of person who didn't believe in limits. She had lived long enough to know that opportunities don't come twice, and when they do, they don't wait for anyone's permission. One wish was never enough for a heart that yearned for more than what life had given. And in that moment, amid the golden light, the unspoken intentions, and a slight, challenging smile, the seeds of tragedy began to take root. The sky had not yet fully brightened when three small figures slipped through the rows of rotting bamboo fences, their heels caked with cold mud and their breaths mingling with the morning mist. The smell of damp grass and old ash clung to their shoulders. In Zion's hands, the old clay jug, tightly wrapped in cloth, lay silent but heavy, as if carrying an unnamed fate. Rio remained still inside, like the last drop of water in a river that had left its course. The previous night, after the tense confrontation among the three children and the exposed secret, no one spoke another word. There were no more accusations, no more promises, only resolve that, late as it was, she had to return. Nia led the way, her eyes sharp as a blade cutting through the fog. Malik followed close behind, trembling but determined, his small hands clutching a cloth backpack filled with a few cornbread pieces, as if it were provisions for a long adventure. And Zion, he held the jug like he held his own heart, each step slow, but brimming with courage. They didn't know that the path to the riverbank, a path once used by their ancestors for rituals and prayers, was now closely guarded by ancient traditions and primal fears. And then, as expected, a familiar raspy voice thundered from the bushes by the roadside. "You kids! Don't you dare go near the sacred river! There's a curse!" Elder Mama June, the keeper of village customs, stood blocking the dirt path, her stout figure wrapped tightly in indigo cloth, hands on hips, as if holding back an entire generation of rebellion. Her eyes flashed, not just with anger, but with the worry only those who had seen too much could understand. The children froze. Malik clung tightly to his brother's sleeve. Zion took a step back. But then, with the instinctive quick thinking only childhood could muster, Nia tugged at both of them and pulled them down into the reeds by the roadside. They crouched among the wet grass, their hearts pounding like small drums in their chests. Mama June passed by, tilting her head suspiciously, but saw nothing beyond the morning mist and the mournful chirping of crickets. She muttered an old incantation and walked on, leaving behind a stillness that even the air held in reverence. Only when her footsteps faded completely did the three children exhale. Without a word, they pressed on. The path ahead curved, the earth gradually turning to sinking sand, and the air grew heavy with the scent of algae. The closer they got to the river, the more the surrounding trees seemed to stand still, as if aware that something momentous was about to unfold. And then, after pushing through the final wall of tall grass, the river appeared. Not loud, not fierce, just still, like a mirror reflecting what the three children hid in their hearts. But what made them halt wasn't the serene beauty of the river. It was the figures. On the bank, beneath the canopy of an ancient willow, shadowy forms flickered, tall, majestic, and waiting. Without asking, Zion knew they weren't from the village. They were of the river, but not everyone standing by the river was there to welcome. Some were there to judge, and Rio, though a princess of the water, could not foresee what was about to happen. The river still flowed, but no longer soft as the breath of night. The water now was colder, thicker, and still, as if listening. The air around the bank seemed to freeze in that moment where land and water no longer held a boundary. Zion, Nia, and Malik stood motionless among the towering reeds, their breaths dissolving into the mist. Beneath their feet, the earth was churned by their hurried steps. On the river's surface, the figures gradually became clearer, tall, silent, carrying the scent of salt, algae, and something ancient. The warriors of the water, those who did not belong to the land, appeared as if they had never left this place. They stood in a semicircle, surrounding the three children and the cloth-covered jug. At the center, one figure stepped forward. No need to state a name, for anyone who knew the legends recognized Commander M'Baku. He didn't ask who had brought the princess back. No investigation was needed. His eyes had seen, and for him, seeing was knowing. The image of a human clutching a jug containing a mermaid was evidence enough to pass judgment. The look he gave Zion held no curiosity, only judgment. Zion had no time to speak. He stood there, hands gripping the jug's rim as if by reflex, not out of fear of losing it, but to hold on to something about to be torn from his grasp. The belief that kindness could be understood correctly. As for Rio, just freed from the jug after a long imprisonment, she had not yet touched the river's surface when she positioned herself in front of the boy, a shimmering golden wave small amidst the looming shadows bearing down. But in a place where laws were passed down through the blood of ancestors, truth was not something to be bargained with. M'Baku opened the punishment jug, a vessel that appeared only when the river's blood was betrayed. The grey, ash-like water poured out, odourless, colourless, but so cold that no one needed to touch it to know it stripped away life. The stream hit Zion without hesitation. It happened in the blink of an eye. His body recoiled, as if resisting by instinct, then slowly hardened. His fingers, arms, hair, and eyes all turned to stone. No scream, no chance to plead. Only the image of a boy with wide open eyes, frozen at the moment he was about to restore freedom. The riverbank trembled faintly. The wind shifted. The mist dissolved in patches on the water's surface, as if someone was screaming from the depths. But it wasn't the wind. It was the river's anger. Rio's anger. She did not cry, but the entire river seemed to weep in her place. The water surged. Reeds were felled by invisible gusts. No one needed to understand the language of mermaids to know. What had just been taken was not merely a child, but the last shred of trust she held in the world of humans. Zion had not dreamed of grand things. He had only dreamed of freeing his mother and brother from poverty. But now, that dream turned to stone with him, right at the place where he once believed magic could happen. As the river calmed and the warriors receded into the mist, Rio sank into a silence as deep as the waters beneath her feet. No one stopped her from returning to her kingdom. No one needed to issue a command. No one spoke as she swam away, quiet as a strand of seaweed torn from its root, drifting in shapeless emptiness. The kingdom beneath the river welcomed her with silent splendor. The coral domes, the pearl lanterns, the gentle waves no longer brought a smile to her face as they once did. All sounds grew distant. The evening choruses, the dances around the wave towers, the lively calls of her sisters, all were now mere memories. Rio stopped singing. She stopped eating. She took no part in any ceremonies. Day after day, she sat beneath the highest canopy of sea moss in the royal city, her eyes fixed on the water's surface above, where sunlight refracted into shattered rainbows. In every beam of light, she imagined Zion reaching out to her from a petrified world. What had she brought to that boy? A gift? A miracle? Or a sentence for trusting a world that didn't know how to listen? Her mother, the clan leader, a mermaid queen who had seen many moons and was once harder than stone, could no longer ignore the slow fading in her daughter's eyes. One night, as the palace slept, she quietly swam to Rio's side, sitting close as she had when Rio was a child, when every nightmare melted in her mother's embrace. Rio spoke, not pleading, not accusing, just a steady stream of words flowing like water from a crevice, about crossing the boundary, the jug, Zion's eyes, the wish, and the painful fate the boy didn't deserve. Her mother said nothing as she listened, but when Rio led her to the place where the stone statue rested by the old riverbank, in the form of a child with a hand still placed over his heart, she could not hold back. The eyes of the one who had balanced an entire kingdom of water now brimmed with tears. For the first time in years, she wept, not because she had lost the daughter who once made her proud, but because she realized she had nearly lost something more precious than her throne, her daughter's trust in humanity. "I lost my child to fear of humans," she whispered, in a sound only the water could hear. "But it was one of them who kept you alive." No more words were needed. From her chest, she drew a jade vial, the last sacred water of the royal lineage, used only when life needed to be restored to something worthy. Rio took it with both hands. The light from the sacred water in the vial illuminated her face, no longer that of a young mermaid, but of a princess matured by her own wounds. With no farewell song, no escorting entourage, Rio swam alone against the current, along the path of memories, back toward the stone statue waiting. Each flick of her tail was a prayer, each bursting bubble a heartbeat held tight. And on the quiet sandy bank, amid bowing reeds and a river that seemed to pause, Zion stood there, silent, motionless between two worlds, the dawn draped gently over the river like a silken veil, transparent and tender. The mist slowly cleared, revealing the sandy bank where small footprints had etched deep into the fateful morning. There, amidst the strange stillness of a world still half asleep, Rio emerged from the water, clutching the last sacred vial, a treasure of the royal lineage, granted only to souls daring to cross their own boundaries. The other bank remained unchanged, silent. The stone statue stood there, motionless, as if it had buried time itself. At its base, the reeds bowed, as if sensing a pain no breeze could soothe. Rio stepped forward. Not a sound came from the water. No whispers from ancestors. Only the wind brushed lightly through her wet, curly hair, and a heartbeat with fervor, not from fear, but from trust. She knelt before the statue, her hands trembling under the weight, not of the vial, but of all she was about to sacrifice. The royal blood in her had been taught that laws were inviolable, but her heart, the only thing not bound by tradition, whispered something else. She opened the vial, and the vapor from the sacred water rose, like silent smoke from a final candle. No radiant light, no clamorous magic. Just a few drops trickled into her palm, strangely warm, like the breath of life waiting to be restored to something worthier than blood or power.
She placed her hand on the statue's forehead, its coldest part, letting the drops seep into the faint cracks of the stone. A faint shiver passed through the air, not from the earth nor the water, but as if time itself were shifting course. The statue's surface began to tremble slightly. Then tiny fissures opened like streams finding their way after a drought. Pieces of stone peeled away, quietly, without breaking or clattering, dissolving as if shedding a shell held too long. As the final piece fell, a human form emerged, thin but whole, like a gentle reply from a world no one had believed in. Zion opened his eyes. He didn't speak, nor did Rio. They looked at each other, in a moment that needed no words, no reasons. Between them, everything that had happened was encapsulated in a single glance: pain, gratitude, and profound relief. From the river below, the mermaid warriors emerged, no longer bearing their imposing menace. They approached and knelt. No one commanded it. They bowed not to authority but to courage that had transcended rules. Behind them, Rio's mother stepped forward. In her hand was no scepter, only a grey silk cloth lightly tied around her wrist, a sign of reconciliation. She gestured. From the river's depths, a pearl-encrusted chest rose, opening in the water. Inside were gold, pearls, and rubies, not just treasures, but a chance at a new life, wrapped in atonement and respect. Rio stood by, watching as Zion bowed his head and accepted. They didn't part with tears, only with a gentle touch of hands, enough to promise that nothing is lost if hearts still hold on to each other. years later. In the Gullah land, the full moon festival unfolded once more. Drums resounded, lanterns hung brightly, and children ran in circles, singing the old songs their mothers had once heard. Rio sat by the water's edge, older, quieter, but still carrying the innocence time could not wash away. Suddenly, she heard someone call her name. She turned, her heart skipping a beat. A man stepped out from the crowd. White suit, bright eyes, the gait of someone who had walked through storms to return to himself. It was Zion. No longer the boy of yesteryear, but a man the community trusted, the one who built bridges, opened schools, and gave hope to children who once stood where he had. He looked at her. No need for words. And she understood. The seed of a wish from long ago had bloomed on the most barren of grounds, the human heart. Under that full moon's light, as the final drumbeat sounded and everyone returned to their warm homes, Rio remained by the river. No more magic was named, no more sacred water or treasure chests. Only the breath of the water remained, and memories that could not be erased. But something had changed, not just in her, but in this world, where a small wish, a single act of courage, could soothe centuries of misunderstanding. The story of Rio and Zion is not just about mermaids or magic. It is a symphony of gratitude, trust, and the longing to rise above fate. It is proof that even in the darkest waters, light finds a way through kind hearts. Perhaps you too have been like Rio, lost between choices and prejudice. Or like Zion, carrying a wish no one believed could come true. But this story reminds us, no one is too small to make a difference, and true magic lies in what we are willing to give without expecting in return. The river still flows, and somewhere a new call echoes. Has Rio's journey truly ended, or is there another deeper part waiting to be told?